Time now to debate some of the big stories of the week with the Inside Utah Politics panel. This week we have State Representative Jennifer Daly-Provo and State Senator Todd Weiler. Great to have both of you on the show. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Glenn.
Thank you.
Let's get right into the big story really of the week, and that is the Bible ban reversed in the Davis County School District. Senator, let's start with you. Talk about why this reversal. Does it boil down to political pressure?
I don't think so. I think that if you read the law, it allows parents to challenge books that are of a pornographic, X-rated nature. I've read the Bible. I understand it deals with some sensitive topics, but it doesn't deal with them in a pornographic sort of way. So I really take issue that it was ever taken off. In fact, the parents panel that took it off the shelves, you know, theoretically, they acknowledged it didn't fall within the statute, but they thought there were other reasons to take it off. I'm glad that the elected officials on the school board put it back. You know, there may be a discussion for another day whether, you know, religious texts like the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Quran, the Torah, whatever, belong in schools. But certainly this law that I sponsored in the Senate did not warrant removing the Bible. Representative,
your thoughts on why the reversal?
Well, I think that the reversal was actually just the culmination of the natural process that was set up. This process was set out in statute. The law itself told school districts that they had to create a process, and the state school board created a model process in order to expedite and make the development and implementation of that process easier for the local school districts, because we ask a lot of our school districts, and you know, if you're gonna be top heavy, top down from the legislature and tell school districts how they have to do the business. And I'm not saying that I agree with the bill itself. I actually voted no on the bill on the House floor. But the process of reversing that was the natural process that would have probably happened regardless of the intervention and the hyperbolic rhetoric that unfortunately unfolded in administrative rules and then in the interim education committee. So it's unfortunate that, you know, that tempers got so hot and that the rhetoric was so strident. But I think that it was an important process because it brought attention to maybe some of the flaws in the way the statute is written, and that certainly was a big topic of discussion in administrative rules. But even when those school district officials were at the legislature, sometimes being raked over the coals by our elected officials, they continued to say, please let this process play out. You have dictated a process for us and you haven't let us finish it yet. And so I think that, you know, the discussion was important. It elevated the conversation in the minds of the people in our community and how state statute affects people and families every day.
Mm-hmm. Senator, I'd like to get your thoughts on that hearing that was held recently up in the Capitol. The representative using the term raked over the coals, others saying that district employees were threatened. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I was not in attendance at that hearing, so first, I'm not on that committee. Second of all, I'm a practicing lawyer, and I was actually in trial in Provo on the interim day, but I think it's unfortunate if attacks are personal. I don't think any Davis School District officials are trying to expose children to pornography, but we do know that some of those books with X-rated content have crept into our schools over the past couple of years, and I think it's totally appropriate for parents to be able to ask that those books be reviewed.
Okay, let's talk about the law in general. Senator, you kind of brought up a point of why you thought the Bible should have been reinstated. I'm wondering if some of the other books maybe fall under that same standard. But let's start with you, Representative, on this one. Your thoughts on how the law is being implemented in general, and do you believe some of the books that have been removed, like the Bible, should be reinstated?
Well, I think that as long as there's a fair process, then they should be reinstated. But the fact of the matter is, you know, it has never turned out well when we start banning books. And, you know, I'm glad that there's a process that parents can be involved in this. But really, at the end of the day, the conclusion that was drawn at administrative rules was that we need to revisit the law and make sure that if these decisions are being made, that they're ultimately being made by elected officials and not by parent volunteers. Because really elected officials are the ones that need to be held accountable for the decisions that are made in these bodies. And so, you know, I think that there will be a statutory look at how the original law was written, and my takeaway, at least from administrative rules, I don't sit on interim education committee, but I think at the end of the day, despite the rhetoric, there was a recognition that this needs to be a conversation between constituents and elected officials, and not volunteer parents that, are putting themselves in untenable situations in making these decisions that they are statutorily required to make, and then are put in dangerous situations unthreatened.
Senator, your thoughts on how the law is being implemented? I've seen some of the texts you refer to as being pornographic. I think that does draw a lot of attention, and people understand the argument for those being taken off the shelves in school libraries. However, some of the other books that have been removed, there could be a different argument for. Do you believe that under the same statute, or the same way the Bible was reinstated, some of those other books could potentially be as well?
I haven't read them all. I was very hesitant about running this bill, so I asked for copies of about 10 books that I reviewed. They all had Davis School District on the library. That's my district. That's where I live. And the stuff I read was shocking. We're not talking about PG material. We're not talking about PG-13 material. We're not talking about R-rated material. We're talking about X-rated material. I'm talking about an 800-word description of oral sex. That's what we're talking about. And if any parent wants their children in junior high to have that content, they can go out and buy that, okay? Or they can go to a Salt Lake City library and check it out. And I think banning books is very irresponsible rhetoric, because House Bill 374, you can read the bill 100 times. It doesn't ban a single book. It asks that some books can be reviewed, that parents can ask for books to be reviewed to see if they're age appropriate. Now, some of the books that are being challenged, like The Kite Runner, I've read that book. I would let my teenage children read that book. Even though it deals with some sensitive content, it's not pornographic. And I think the Supreme Court said it best, the justice who said, "I know it when I see it." And the stuff I saw would have made Monica Lewinsky blush.
Okay, Representative, any final words on this topic before we move on?
Well, I just want to drive home the point that I have a lot of faith in our school librarians, and I do believe that they do an exceptional job at making sure that the readers in their schools are reading content that are appropriate. And if there needs to be additional oversight by school boards and additional eyes and input on literature that's available, let's make it accountable. Let's make it voter approved. Accountability by elected officials.
Glenn, the librarians I've talked to said they don't have time to read every book, and they welcome additional scrutiny. And so, if the representative is saying that parents shouldn't have a say on what's in their kids' libraries, I just fundamentally disagree.
I certainly don't think that I said anything about parents not having a say in this, and I think that I have conversations with my kids' librarians, and I think that a lot of parents do. And but the flaw in the law is that we have assigned parents to be responsible for making these decisions, and instead it needs to be a better review process that ultimately elected officials are accountable to.
Okay, we have about 2 minutes left. I want to get to another important topic we're seeing here in the state, and this is the federal land swap issue. Representative Curtis picking that up, and it actually had a hearing in the nation's capital on Thursday. This idea of swapping SITLA lands for federal lands, obviously the idea these federal lands can be then developed and used for economic gain. Senator, let's start off with you. Your thoughts on this process that's playing out, and you have mentioned to me that it's really nothing new.
Well, yeah, I support it. I haven't delved into every detail of this, but we've been doing this for over a decade, and Utah has come out very, very, it's been very advantageous for Utah to do these types of deals in the past. I think we have very smart people at SITLA that evaluate all of these deals, in detail, which is totally appropriate. But I hope that we'll continue doing this as long as it benefits the state of Utah, and I think that this one does.
All right, Representative.
So I actually really like this proposal that SITLA brought. I had the opportunity to review it at Legislative Management Committee, where the proposal was approved unanimously in a bipartisan manner. What's interesting to me is that the same proposal came to the legislature in the 2022 session, and for reasons that I don't understand, was opposed at the time. But I am really glad that Congressman Curtis has taken this up at the federal level, and that we have agreement at the state level, and that we are actively, state level and federal level, recognizing that there are a lot of areas around Bears Ears that deserve protection. and that there is an opportunity to do that at the same time as develop other parcels of land throughout the state, both mineral extraction and real estate development. There's a broad spectrum of what might be considered economic opportunities, and I think that this is a very forward-thinking, responsible way to get all parties to the table and move forward.
Okay, we'll have to end it on that note. There does seem to be buy-in from many stakeholders on these ideas with the federal land swap. Really appreciate your insight, both of you. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Glenn.
Thanks.
Stay with us. We'll be right back with more Inside Utah Politics.